The summer carnival lights danced across the evening sky as children's laughter filled the air. Parents watched from nearby benches while their little ones rode the merry-go-round and played games at colorful stalls. Nobody noticed the slight shimmer in the air above the carnival, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. Tommy, age 8, was about to take his turn at the ring toss when he felt a strange tingling sensation. Before he could call out to his mom, the world around him began to fade. In an instant, he found himself in a cold, metallic room with curved walls that glowed with a faint blue light. He wasn't alone. About 20 other children from the carnival materialized around him, their faces showing confusion and fear. Some started crying, while others stood frozen in shock. Tommy noticed they were all around his age. The alien ship's interior hummed with an otherworldly energy. Through large observation windows, the children could see Earth growing smaller, a blue marble shrinking into the vastness of space. Their captors, tall figures with silvery skin and large, oval eyes, watched them from behind transparent barriers. The aliens, who called themselves the Collectors, had been studying Earth from afar. They believed human children would make perfect test subjects for their advanced educational programs. Their own species had evolved beyond the need for traditional learning, and they were fascinated by the human capacity for rapid adaptation and growth. What the Collectors didn't account for was the unique nature of human children. While alien young were calm, orderly, and completely obedient, human kids were something entirely different. Within hours of the abduction, their carefully planned experiment began to unravel. It started with Tommy. Unlike the other children who were still processing their situation, he was already testing the boundaries of their containment. He noticed that when the aliens used their control panels, specific light patterns appeared. By watching carefully, he began to understand the basic patterns of their technology. The Collectors had made their first crucial mistake. They had assumed that fear would keep the children passive and manageable. They didn't realize that human children, while scared, were also incredibly resilient and adaptable. More importantly, they had no idea about the chaos that a group of frightened but resourceful Earth kids could create. As the first day in space drew to a close, Tommy had already made friends with several other children, including Mike, a computer-loving 9-year-old, and Emma, a 7-year-old gymnast who could squeeze through spaces the aliens never thought to secure. Together, they began forming a plan, not just to survive, but to show their captors exactly why taking human children was a terrible mistake. The Collectors were about to learn that human children weren't simply test subjects. They were unpredictable, creative, and most dangerously of all. They were perfectly capable of working together to cause absolute mayhem. Their sophisticated research vessel was about to become a playground of chaos, and their carefully planned experiment was about to backfire in ways they could never have imagined. As Tommy lay in his assigned sleep pod that night, watching the unfamiliar stars through the ship's window, he smiled slightly. Tomorrow, he and his new friends would begin their resistance. The aliens wanted to study human children? Well, they were about to get a very practical education. The second day aboard the alien ship began with what the Collectors thought would be a simple testing session. They divided the children into small groups, each assigned to different learning chambers. Their plan was to study how human children processed information and adapted to new environments. What they got instead was their first taste of human childhood chaos. Tommy's group was placed in a room filled with holographic puzzles. The aliens watched through their observation panels, recording every move. What they didn't notice was Emma, the tiny gymnast, slipping through a maintenance duct they had assumed was too small for any creature to navigate. While the aliens focused on Tommy apparently struggling with a simple puzzle, Emma was crawling through the ship's internal systems. Mike had noticed that the ship's lights flickered whenever someone moved through these ducts, and he used this knowledge to guide Emma using a pattern of blinks they had worked out during breakfast. The other children caught on quickly to the plan. They began acting increasingly confused by the simple tasks, forcing the frustrated aliens to spend more time explaining and adjusting their tests. This distraction was exactly what they needed. Emma finally reached what looked like a central control node, just as Mike had guessed from studying the light patterns in their sleeping quarters. The small space was filled with glowing crystals and humming technology. Following Mike's instructions, which had been whispered during their morning meal, Emma began pulling out crystals and rearranging them. The effects were immediate and dramatic. Throughout the ship, systems began to go haywire. The artificial gravity in the testing chambers started fluctuating wildly. Doors opened and closed at random. Most importantly, the force fields keeping the children contained began to weaken. The collectors rushed to respond to the chaos, their usual calm demeanor cracking as alarms blared throughout the ship. They had never encountered such a situation before. Their own children would never dare to tamper with ship systems, and they hadn't considered that human children could be capable of such actions. Tommy seized the moment of confusion. "Now," he shouted, and all the children began running in different directions, exactly as they had planned. The aliens tried to round them up, but they hadn't counted on the energy and speed of young humans. The children slid under their legs, dodged around corners, and used their small size to full advantage. The ship, once a model of order and efficiency, descended into complete chaos. Some kids were throwing the aliens' testing equipment around, while others had figured out how to access the food dispensers and were causing them to spray purple alien juice everywhere. The collector's pristine white walls were soon decorated with sticky handprints in every color imaginable. Through it all, Tommy led his group with surprising skill. He had spent hours watching the aliens' movements and had realized they couldn't turn quickly due to their tall, rigid bodies. The children used this weakness to stay just out of reach, spinning and changing direction faster than their captors could respond. By the time Emma was found and escorted back to the main group, the damage was done. The ship's systems would take hours to return to normal, and the collectors were beginning to realize that their perfect experiment was anything but perfect. That evening, as the aliens finally managed to restore order and return the children to their sleeping quarters, the collectors held an emergency meeting. Their test subjects were proving far more difficult than anticipated. What they didn't realize was that this was only the beginning. In their pods that night, the children shared quiet laughs and whispered new plans. They had discovered their power, not just in their ability to cause chaos. Control panels with intense focus. "The lights," she whispered to Tommy during their lunch break. "They're not just power patterns. They're words." She explained how the shifting colors on the alien panels reminded her of the coding sequences she'd seen on her mom's computer screen. This revelation changed everything. The children began paying careful attention to the control panels, with Lucy teaching them to recognize basic patterns. They noticed that red sequences always meant doors, blue dealt with gravity, and green controlled temperature. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The collectors, meanwhile, were dealing with their own crisis. Their superiors had contacted them, demanding progress reports on their human study. The aliens had been too embarrassed to admit that their subjects had already partially compromised ship systems and were proving impossible to control. Instead, they requested more time, claiming the complexity of human learning patterns required extended observation. That afternoon, the children were introduced to what the aliens called group harmony exercises. The collectors hoped that by encouraging cooperative activities, they could channel the children's energy into more manageable behavior. It was their biggest mistake yet. Tommy, Mike, Emma, and Lucy used this opportunity to spread their knowledge to the other kids. Under the guise of playing cooperative games, they taught everyone about the control panel patterns. The aliens watched approvingly as the children sat in circles, tapping rhythms together, not realizing they were actually practicing Lucy's color code sequences. By evening, every child on the ship knew at least the basic commands. The collectors, seeing the children finally engaging in quiet, organized activity, thought their new approach was working. They didn't notice Tommy sneaking looks at the ship's navigation panels, or Mike memorizing the sequence of lights that flashed when they passed through different sectors of space. That night, as the children were led back to their sleeping pods, the aliens felt a sense of relief. Finally, they thought, their subjects were adapting to proper behavioral patterns. They didn't notice Lucy quickly touching a control panel as they passed, or the slight change in the ship's environmental settings that would take effect in exactly 6 hours. As Tommy lay in his pod, he could barely contain his excitement. Tomorrow would bring phase 2 of their plan, and this time, they weren't just aiming to cause chaos. Thanks to Lucy's discovery, they were going to take control of ship systems one by one. The collectors thought they were dealing with simple test subjects, but they were about to learn that human children were the most dangerous study group in the galaxy. The 4th day aboard the alien ship began with an unexpected chill. Lucy's midnight programming had worked perfectly. The temperature in the collectors' quarters had slowly dropped to uncomfortably cold levels, while the children's sleeping area remained normal. The aliens, unused to any environmental discomfort, were sluggish and confused. Tommy watched with hidden satisfaction as their captors huddled in their thermal suits, their silvery skin taking on a slightly blue tinge. The children's plan was working better than expected. The collectors were so busy trying to fix the temperature problem that they didn't notice other small changes happening throughout the ship. Mike had spent the previous day counting the seconds between guard shifts and had discovered a pattern. Every 3 hours, the aliens would rotate duties, leaving certain corridors briefly unmonitored. During breakfast, he passed this information to Emma through their secret code of fork taps and spoon movements. The real action began during the morning's educational session. The collectors, still distracted by their environmental issues, had placed the children in front of interactive screens to learn alien mathematics. Lucy noticed that the teaching program security was surprisingly simple. It was designed to prevent cheating, not hacking. While most kids pretended to struggle with the alien numbers, Lucy typed in a sequence she had memorized from the control panels. The screen flickered, and suddenly she had access to the ship's communication system. She quickly downloaded what looked like a map of the vessel before the system could detect the intrusion. During lunch, Lucy shared her discovery with Tommy using their food to draw diagrams. The ship wasn't just a research vessel, it was a small part of a larger fleet. Somewhere out there, other alien ships might be planning similar kidnappings. They had to do more than just resist, they had to stop the collectors for good. The afternoon brought the perfect opportunity. The aliens, believing they had finally fixed the temperature problem, decided to proceed with their planned tests of human learning capacity. They separated the children into smaller groups again, but this time, the kids were ready. On Tommy's signal, every child began acting strange in exactly the same way. They all tilted their heads to the left, blinked rapidly, and started humming the same tune. The collectors were fascinated. Was this some unknown aspect of human group behavior? They immediately began recording and studying this new phenomenon. While the aliens were distracted by this peculiar display, Emma slipped once again into the maintenance ducts. But this time, she wasn't alone. 2 other small children, carefully chosen for their size and agility, followed her. Lucy had discovered that the ship's main control room was accessible through these passages, but it would take more than one person to reach it. The collectors. Confusion turned to alarm when their observation screens began showing the same image over and over, a simple smiling face drawn by the children during their art session. Every time they cleared it, the face would reappear. They didn't realize this was Mike's work, a simple but effective distraction using the knowledge he had gained from watching their security protocols. By the time the aliens noticed something was seriously wrong, it was too late. Emma and her team had reached the main control room's access panel. Using Lucy's coded instructions, they began the process of overriding the ship's primary systems. The day ended with the collectors in complete disarray. Their test subjects were showing signs of coordinated behavior they couldn't understand, their ship systems were acting erratically, and their superiors were demanding updates on the research progress. As night fell, Tommy gathered all the children for a secret meeting in the sleeping quarters. Tomorrow would be the day they had been preparing for, the day they would take control of the ship. The aliens thought they were studying humanity's next generation, but they were about to become the subjects of a very different kind of experiment. The fifth day started with a series of alarms blaring throughout the ship. The collectors rushed to their stations, their silvery faces showing signs of stress. The environmental systems were malfunctioning again, but this time, something was different. Each section of the ship was reporting different problems: artificial gravity fluctuations in one area, air pressure changes in another, and temperature spikes everywhere. What the aliens didn't know was that this chaos was completely planned. Tommy had coordinated with Lucy to create what they called Operation Confusion. Each child had been assigned a specific task, and they were executing their roles perfectly. In the sleeping quarters, Mike led a group of children in what appeared to be a morning exercise routine. The collectors, watching through their monitors, saw nothing unusual about the children jumping, spinning, and waving their arms. They didn't realize that each movement was actually a signal to other groups throughout the ship. Emma and her team of small explorers had spent the night placing tiny pieces of the aliens' educational toys in crucial machinery. These objects weren't big enough to cause serious damage, but they created dozens of small malfunctions that kept the aliens running from one problem to another. Lucy had made the biggest breakthrough yet. During the night, she had finally cracked the pattern in the ship's main computer language. It wasn't just about colors anymore, she understood how to input actual commands. She passed this knowledge to Tommy through their breakfast time code, using arrangements of food on their plates to represent different command sequences. The collectors' breaking point came during what was supposed to be their midday research session. They had gathered all the children in the main observation room for a group study. As the aliens prepared their testing equipment, Tommy gave the signal everyone had been waiting for. He dropped his juice cup. Instantly, every child began doing something different. Some started singing at the top of their lungs, others began running in perfect circles, and a few lay down and pretended to sleep. The aliens were overwhelmed trying to record and analyze all these behaviors at once. In the midst of this choreographed chaos, Lucy made her way to the main control panel. The aliens were so distracted by the bizarre display that they didn't notice her small fingers dancing across the controls, inputting the commands she had memorized. Suddenly, all the doors in the ship slid open at once. The artificial gravity began switching on and off in a rhythmic pattern that the children had practiced for, but which left the aliens stumbling and disoriented. Emergency lights flashed in a dazzling sequence that only the kids knew how to navigate through. The collectors tried to regain control, but years of relying on automated systems had left them unprepared for this kind of situation. They watched in horror as their test subjects transformed into a coordinated unit, moving through the ship with purpose and precision. Tommy led the main group toward the ship's bridge, using the zero-gravity intervals to bounce off walls and ceilings, staying just ahead of the confused aliens. Emma's team used their small size to block access to critical systems, jamming doors at crucial moments to separate the aliens from each other. The day's chaos reached its peak when Mike activated the ship's internal communication system, broadcasting a song that all the children had learned during their captivity. The simple melody echoed through every chamber and corridor, but hidden within the tune were Lucy's coded instructions, telling each child exactly where to go and what to do. By evening, the unthinkable had happened. The children had effectively taken control of entire sections of the ship. The collectors found themselves locked out of crucial areas, their own security systems turned against them. They huddled in their remaining accessible spaces, sending desperate messages to their superiors. As the kids gathered in their new headquarters, the ship's main recreation area, Tommy and Lucy worked on the final phase of their plan. Tomorrow would be the day they took complete control, but their ultimate goal wasn't just escape. They needed to make sure the collectors never tried to kidnap human children again. The sixth day aboard the alien vessel began with an unexpected message echoing through the ship's communications system. It was Tommy's voice, clear and confident, addressing not just their collector captors but also the alien command they had been frantically calling for help. "This is the human children of Earth," he announced, reading from Lucy's carefully prepared script. "We now control your ship. We have learned your technology, your systems, and your weaknesses. If you ever try to take more children from our planet, we will share this knowledge with every human on Earth." The collectors huddled in their remaining safe zone, watching in disbelief as their sophisticated research vessel operated completely without their input. In just 6 days, their test subjects had evolved from simple study material into something they had never encountered before, an unpredictable force that had outwitted their superior technology. Mike had spent the night reprogramming the ship's security robots. Instead of guarding the aliens' vital areas, the machines now played an endless game of tag with each other through the corridors, creating a moving barrier that kept the collectors confined to their quarters. Emma and her team had transformed the maintenance ducts into a secret transportation network. They moved supplies, passed messages, and monitored the aliens' movements through their newly established spy holes. The small spaces that the collectors had considered a design oversight had become the children's greatest advantage. Lucy's understanding of the alien computer systems had grown exponentially. She discovered that the ship's database contained information about other potential target planets. Using this knowledge, she began broadcasting warnings to these worlds, using the collectors' own communication channels. The aliens received their first shock when their superiors responded to Tommy's message. Instead of sending help, the alien command expressed fascination with the humans' unexpected capabilities. These children had done something unprecedented. They had adapted to and overcome advanced alien technology in less than a week. By midday, the children had implemented their final strategy. They began transmitting detailed records of their takeover back to Earth, using the ship's powerful communication array. The signal was designed to reach not just space agencies, but any computer or phone that could receive it. Lucy had encoded the message with everything they had learned about the aliens' technology. The collectors watched in horror as their secret presence on Earth was exposed. Decades of careful observation and hidden research were revealed in an instant. But the children weren't interested in revenge. They had a different plan in mind. Tommy called a meeting with the alien leaders, conducted through the ship's video systems. His demands were simple but firm. The collectors would return all the children to Earth, and in exchange, the kids would keep some of their alien technology discoveries secret. However, if the aliens ever attempted another kidnapping, everything would be revealed. The afternoon was spent preparing for their return journey. The children maintained complete control of the ship, with Lucy orchestrating their course back to Earth. Mike's reprogrammed robots now served as their helpers, carrying supplies and maintaining ship systems under the kids' direction. Emma made one final sweep of the maintenance system, ensuring no alien could try to regain control through the hidden access points. She discovered several emergency override devices and disabled them all, using the skills she had learned from watching Lucy work with the ship's systems. As Earth grew larger in their view screens, the collectors received their final orders from their superiors: accept the children's terms. The human capability for rapid learning and adaptation was far too dangerous to risk antagonizing. The aliens had wanted to study human development. Instead, they had become an example of why Earth's inhabitants, especially its children, were not to be underestimated. That evening, as they approached Earth's orbit, Tommy gathered all the children for one last meeting. They had achieved something extraordinary, not just ensuring their own rescue, but protecting future generations from similar abductions. Their adventure would soon end, but its impact would be felt across the galaxy for years to come. The seventh and final day of their space adventure began with the blue marble of Earth filling the ship's main viewport. The children gathered around the windows, some crying with joy, others holding hands and sharing quiet smiles of triumph. They had done what the aliens had thought impossible. They had taken control of an advanced spacecraft and forced their captors to bring them home. Tommy stood at the main control panel, which had been modified with Lucy's simplified command interface. The collectors watched in amazed silence as this young human confidently guided their sophisticated vessel into Earth's atmosphere. Mike's reprogrammed robots stood guard, ensuring the aliens remained in their designated area during the descent. Emma made one final journey through the maintenance tunnels, completing her most important mission yet. She placed small devices throughout the ship, not to cause damage, but to ensure the aliens would keep their word. Lucy had programmed these monitors to activate if the ship ever came close to Earth again, ready to broadcast an alert to every electronic device within range. The landing site had been carefully chosen. The children had selected the same carnival grounds from which they'd been taken, knowing it would be swarming with police and worried parents by now. As the ship's cloaking device deactivated, revealing their presence to the world below, they could already see the gathering crowd. The ship touched down with perfect precision, its landing witnessed by hundreds of phones and cameras. Tommy activated the external speakers, broadcasting a clear message to the startled crowd. This is Tommy Walker and the other missing children. We're all safe. Please don't be afraid, we're in control of the situation. The ship's main door opened, revealing the children standing proudly at the entrance. Parents rushed forward, tears streaming down their faces as they recognized their sons and daughters. The reunion was everything the children had dreamed of during their time in space. But before joining their families, the children had one final task. Lucy activated a special program she had created, downloading a compressed version of their experience, minus the sensitive technical details, to every device within range. The world would know what had happened, but the most dangerous secrets of alien technology would remain safely locked away, insurance against any future kidnapping attempts. The collectors received their final orders from their superiors: retreat immediately and mark Earth as strictly forbidden for any future studies. The aliens had learned a valuable lesson about underestimating humans, especially their children. As their ship prepared to depart, now under their own control again, the collectors sent one last message, not to their command, but to the children. We came to study human development, the message read, but instead, you taught us. Your species young are unlike any we have encountered. We will not return, and we will spread the word, Earth's children are not to be trifled with. As the alien ship vanished into the sky, the children began sharing their story with authorities and families. Tommy explained how they had worked together, each contributing their unique skills to their escape. Mike demonstrated some of the simple coding tricks they had learned, while Emma described their secret network through the ship's maintenance systems. Lucy, surrounded by amazed computer scientists, explained how she had cracked the alien computer language, careful to leave out the most crucial details. The world celebrated their return, but only the children knew the full extent of their victory. They had not just escaped, they had ensured the safety of generations to come. That night, as Tommy lay in his own bed for the first time in a week, he thought about everything they had accomplished. They had faced an advanced alien civilization and won not through force, but through creativity, cooperation, and courage. The collectors had wanted to study human children. Instead, they had learned why they were the most remarkable beings in the galaxy. The adventure was over, but its impact would ripple across the stars forever. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations were sharing a new warning: beware of Earth, especially its young. They may look small and simple, but inside each child is the power to change the universe.